Welcome, Karen. Welcome back.
Welcome to another beautiful, beautiful episode.
Of what? Of Beers and Biscuits, Karen. Of Beers and Biscuits. A dogcast for the rest of us.
Only the greatest dogcast available.
So grab a beverage, give your dog a biscuit, and enjoy the conversation. So, Karen, we've kind of been skimping on this a little bit, but do you actually have a beverage today?
I have a Coca-Cola. No, it's really funny because I went out and this is gonna make me sound like an alcoholic, but I went out and I bought all these different beers, right? And I was like, okay, we're gonna be so ready for this season. I'm gonna be stocked.
Right.
And they're all gone now.
What? Oh my God. I
But
still
like you
have.
said, to be fair, we've been skimping out on this part. And
Right.
so I have to now go back and purchase some more stuff. Or if there's a beer company out there listening that wants to send us some,
Right.
we'd be happy to
We
shout
would
them
be
out.
happy. We would be happy about that.
Well, that's not so bad. I mean, I do have a man in the house that likes to
Oh,
also he's always like, "Oh, can I have one of
stealing it.
these?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine, just leave me one," and then by the time it gets to the last one, it's like I mean, obviously, I have some in there too, but the last one, I was like, "Oh, well, I mean, I might as well just buy more before we do this," and then I forgot. So
That's okay. That's okay.
But do you have a beverage tonight?
I actually have what's left of my coffee from this morning, so that's kind of gross. But
It's that time of year, though, when, like, if you got your iced coffee in the morning, it theoretically can stay fine all year. Or not all
yeah.
year. Oh god,
Yeah,
that
I've
made me
been
mad.
I've been slowly sipping on it all day. So I do have some left. So hopefully that'll get me through today. Or the rest of today rather.
I believe it too.
So what do we have coming up? Karen, we have an episode rather. Let me be grammatically correct. We have an episode coming up with Erika Fields, who I absolutely adore, and she is the dog guardian, dog mom to hound dog Mack on Instagram of Instagram fame.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, like I had a really great time recording with her.
I did too. I was First of all, I know we say this about everyone, but it's true. I had so much fun. It was such a good conversation, and it was a conversation that was also, like, near and dear to my heart.
Right.
And I always obviously, anytime I get to talk about something I love. But I really loved it because we got into kind of all the stuff you don't expect when you're getting a new dog.
Right.
We expect those Disney dogs, those, you know, or as my friend likes to call them, like, those appliance dogs that just come and they're ready to use and you don't have to do much, but
Plug and play.
that's not the
Yeah.
reality.
No,
Um,
and I think too, like, I think it was a really good conversation, like what you're saying, like, not necessarily like expectations, like I'm expecting this dog to be perfect, but for a first time dog owner, dog guardian, like and myself included, we don't and we can't think of all the things. And so
right.
I thought this was a really great episode to kind of just dive into what a good number of new dog guardians face. And that's, you know, not necessarily getting, like you're saying, this plug and play dog, which is what we all want, right? But that doesn't mean it's not the dog that we should have or the dog
Absolutely.
that's going to fulfill us. And I think that was such a valid and wonderful point that was made throughout that episode.
Absolutely. Because it's also I think it will also help a lot of people because those first time dog owners, myself included in that list, it's nice to hear somebody else explaining what you're experiencing so you're not feeling alone. And I think that's also like what this podcast really is about
Right.
just letting people know that whatever it is you're experiencing with your dog, you're not alone in it. And there's somebody out there who's going to understand your journey or sympathize with it. And it's important that you find those people to help
Right.
you.
Right. And somebody that's going to be helped by your story, right? There is a restorative and a healing component to finding that community and finding those other people and listening to somebody that says, "Hey, I've been there and there's light at the end of this tunnel for you." And I feel like a lot of times that's missing with especially newer dog guardians is this, you know, kind of feel like we're left out in an island on an island somewhere. Um,
I
so
always
yeah.
tend to think too, sometimes new dog guardians can feel like almost like lied to a little bit. Like they're sold this
Mhm.
narrative, and then when you actually bring that dog home, whether it's a puppy, an adolescent, a senior, whatever it is, it's not what you were sold. It is a different it's like you switch the channel. When you went from, like, watching a nice movie to a murder documentary in the nicest way.
You're like, "Whoa,
Right. What
where
did I
did
get
that go
myself
wrong?"
into?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it was great. I think we had a really great time. I'm really, really happy that we had Erica on, to talk about Mac, um, the stuff that she went through, and then we did also get into something that is very close to your heart, which is undergoing or having a dog that's undergoing, TPLO surgery, which again, I think is very useful for a lot of people because that can be so
Absolutely.
scary.
Oh, 100%. I remember so see, I went through it almost 2 years ago now, and I remember I had a friend who had just recently gone through it with her shepherd, and having that person in my corner was like a godsend during the entire thing, because if I didn't have this person, I don't think I would have been able to get through the experience. So I love talking about the procedure and the recovery and everything that goes into it now, because it's a rough one, and I think so many people can benefit from hearing that. So I really hope that people will listen to this, whether they're about to go through the journey or even if they've already been through the journey of TPLO, so just so they can feel less on an island about it.
Right. Can you hear him?
No, I can't hear anything.
Okay. He's like digging for gold over here on his
Eh,
bed.
he always wants to be a part
I
of the
know.
show.
He's always going to show up in some way.
But yeah, so I hope everyone will enjoy this episode. There's so much we covered, and there's so much that can be taken away from this beautiful episode with Erica.
Awesome. So let's get started.
Welcome, welcome to another episode of Beers and Biscuits. Tonight we have a very special guest who I'm excited, or I should say, we are excited to introduce you to. So, welcome, Erica.
Hey, thanks for having me. I am Erica, as you just said. I am Mack's dog mom. He is a almost 6-year-old crazy little wild man who I love and adore. And we've had a wild journey together the last 5.5 years that we've known each other.
He's so adorable. I love your videos. And I think what was really funny was that I didn't realize when I started following you that you lived so close. I was like, wow, some of those like videos that she's sending. I'm like, that looks like around here. And then, like the more we talked, I was like, wow, you're like not that far away from me. Yeah. And I think too, one of the other things that I really liked about some of our early discussions was that you led me to Brown Dog, which led me to Peter. So we'll start off with a great big thank you to you and Mac for bringing me my little Peter pumpkin.
I love that the internet led to that moment. I think that was amazing. I obviously am very passionate about Brown Dog. It's where we adopted Mac from.
Right.
I think they have a great mission, and I'm always so excited when I see someone I know virtually or otherwise adopt from them.
Yeah, they are so great. I love their commitment to welfare, even past adoption, especially with their commitment to positive reinforcement trainers and building that into their adoption contracts. So I really love that. And I'm so, so grateful that I was able to find that. But enough about me and Peter. Let's talk a little bit about you and Mac.
Well, Nicole, you're skipping ahead.
Oh, of course I am. Of course I am. Always.
We like to do some icebreakers on this to ease us into this. Don't worry, Nicole, I came prepared if you didn't.
I'm just so excited to get started.
I know, right? I always am too. So I feel like the first season, I always skipped right over the icebreakers, and you were always like right there with it. And now I think season 2, it's the opposite. So we'll iron out the specifics eventually. But okay, so my first question for you is, if you had to lose one of your senses, which would you choose?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I love food, but at the same time, I feel like I have like a love-hate relationship with food. Like I'm very picky, but I love what I love. So maybe that would be the sense I would give up, just because I'm not like a foodie. I'm not going to those fancy restaurants. I love like visually seeing the world around me. And I also love music, so I wouldn't want to give up either of those. So I guess I would have to give up my sense of taste.
I don't know if I could do that though. I mean, I do love food way too much, obviously. But I think I could do like hearing, but then you brought up music. And I was like, oh, maybe I couldn't do that because I do love music. But in terms of like just everyday living and the general noise level of just being alive, I could probably go without hearing. But then I would want it to be selective and be like, but now I really want to hear because I really want to listen to this song.
I've always wanted to learn sign language, so I feel like hearing, yeah, I think that would be the one I'd have to go with.
It's a tough question.
We don't joke around with our icebreaker questions. We go hard. So, do you have one, Nicole? If not, I have another one.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So, my next one is, if someone took a candid picture of you, what would they most likely find you doing?
Probably hanging out with Mac. I actually was just on a work call earlier today. We were having our holiday party a little early, and my manager's manager was on it, and we were talking. She's like, okay, I didn't realize exactly how much you do with your dog. Like, you have opened my eyes to a whole new world. So I feel like that probably states my investment of spending time with him and just doing things together.
Cute. Mine would be falling or tripping over something.
I kind of felt like that was kind of an easy question for the people that we were going to have on this, because I was like, I feel like everybody would just say their dog. They're going to be with their dog. And that is the best answer in my opinion too. So fantastic. All right, Nicole, you can.
All right. So now I'm on. Okay.
You really want.
So, Erika, let's start with, I guess let's go back to the beginning with little itty bitty Mac. tell us a little bit about your expectations going into, I think I want to adopt a dog, and rescuing versus kind of where you are now with your journey with Mack.
I was a person that went in simply looking for a cute dog, which now I know is not necessarily the best approach. Mac is our first dog as adults. I had a dog growing up, but lost him sadly when I was like 8 or 9. And my parents just decided our lifestyle wasn't a good fit for dogs. We love to travel, and they just didn't feel like it would be fair to welcome a new dog into our life. However, when we bought our house, and my husband was like, I think this is the time. We have the space, we have the financials, like, let's do it. And we went on Pet Finder and just looked at cute dogs. So my expectations were very low in terms of what we were getting into. I truthfully had no idea what really living with a dog was like. I was like, we're responsible. I know that they need to get exercise and spend time outside and, cuddle on the couch if that's their thing. But that was really the extent of my understanding of what welcoming a being into our lives would be like. And now I would say it's really kind of ironic looking back, where I'm like, Mac is everything that we probably wouldn't choose now. Like, love him to the ends of the earth, but very much not a dog that matches our lifestyle. We are very much like, homebodies. We love relaxing on the weekend. I don't think I ever went on a hike before we adopted him. Going in the woods was not my thing by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly was not going out in inclement weather or anything like that. And Mac is high energy, wants to be outside, doesn't matter the weather, hot, cold, rainy, snowy. He loves it all. He also is very much like needs to be entertained all day, wants to be, active and going. And so we've really had to adjust ourselves to make sure that we were meeting his needs and just living the life that he needed to live alongside us. So, you live and learn, as I like to say, but I definitely think we probably could have taken a harder look and asked better questions of what does this dog need? What are they, all about? I also think rescue as a whole has changed a lot since we adopted Mac, even just the language that people are using or the details that rescues and shelters provide to people. So probably a combination of just, it was a different time 6 years ago compared to now, but we also really went in with no expectations, whether that was good or bad. I guess, it did work out in the end, and I feel like Mac ended up where he needed to be. So no regrets.
So, like, in your mind's eye, because I know Karen and I have talked about it a little bit before too, like, in your mind's eye, what did you kind of see as that, like, perfect dog for you? Like, was it the the brewery dog, or like the traveling with you all over the place kind of dog? Like, what did that look like when you first started? Like, what were you looking at?
I think I was under the assumption that every dog just kind of like went with the flow, whether that was going to breweries. I don't even think breweries were big around here, 6 or 7 years ago. But, all I remember is for friends or families that had dogs, like, they would come to parties occasionally, or if we went to their house, they would just like hang out and be part of the activity. So in my mind, it was like, all dogs just like to be around and do whatever their people are doing. Mac is none of those things. He will never come to a party with us. He will likely never come to a brewery with us. He is much more happy at home where it's nice and quiet. And ultimately, that's been totally fine. For me, at least, I think once I realized that he wasn't that type of dog, it was almost like the pressure was off to make him into something he wasn't. Once I realized, like, it's totally normal if dogs want to stay home and not come with you places. So I think just realizing that there's a whole spectrum of dogs was really one of those
Right.
first aha moments I had of like, oh, I actually have no idea what I'm doing and know nothing about dogs, but let me take a moment to realize that they aren't, just something you just bring along with you because, they love you and they want to be with you. It really is recognizing who they are and what makes them happy.
Everything you just said is something I just think we need to just take a second and take it in and not just glaze over, because everything you said is so spot on, and it's something that so many people I'm sure can relate to, because we all go in with expectations and then we learn so much, and it's so important to have the wherewithal to recognize that. And for you as a first time owner or guardian, as an adult, to be able to recognize that and honor that in your dog is so beautiful, and it would just be wonderful if that becomes the norm.
Agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times, like, not intentionally, of course, but, even professionals, we go into it with this preconceived idea of what we're looking for in terms of not necessarily incorporating into our lives, but what is that thing that I'm looking for in a dog that's going to enhance my life? Because at the end of the day, you know, that's really why we get dogs, I think, is to, kind of explore and do things that, we want to do, we feel good about, that are going to bring us happiness, but we want to have a dog that we can do those things with, right? So, like you saying that you've never really been a hiker, you know, you probably wouldn't ask the question of, do I need to take this dog on mile-long hikes every single day? Because in your mind, you're probably like, yeah, we'll do a couple walks around the neighborhood, or we'll play in the backyard. But ultimately, we want to bring dogs in to add to our lives. And so I think a lot of times we do tend to glaze over that, like Karen said, that, this isn't necessarily what I'm getting, but can I make it be what I wanted? And I think that's a lot of times where guardians, trainers, we sometimes get into a not good place approaching it like that.
But I think too, coming at it from like the professional side, there's also like, and we've talked about, I feel like, a little bit about this in past episodes, but there is that level of ego of, I can make any dog a part of my life, or I can work with any dog, and taking that out of it and accepting that the dog you got wants to go on hikes. I don't want to, but he needs it as part of it. And it's a very common thing. So I don't know. I'm just always so impressed and so just honored to be in the presence. I know it sounds very cheesy, but to be in the presence of people who can recognize these things in their dogs and make those changes, because we humans like our routine and we don't like to change. I know I don't want to go out walking in the winter time all the time, but being able to do that, I think that's a really beautiful thing that you do for your dog.
Yeah, I definitely have had to look myself in the mirror and say, okay, like this isn't about me. This isn't about what makes me happy or makes me excited. We certainly have found compromises. So we go to PT on, once a week in the morning to, give him some different types of exercise. So I get to skip that morning walk, which makes me happy, but he still gets what he needs. But I feel like, I think your point earlier about how there's that ego aspect of it. Like ultimately, if I wanted, I probably could put in enough work where Mack could go to a brewery when it's quiet and no one's around. But like, why would I want to put in that effort when I know he's ultimately not going to be happy? And I think that just recognizing that there are those differences in dogs and what makes them happy, just like us, is really important. And I'm hoping more people start to acknowledge that as they welcome new dogs into their lives.
Yeah, and I think too, it definitely, like you said, I think we are seeing a big shift in the rescue / shelter world too, where, we're kind of starting to realize that if we aren't as forthcoming and aren't as honest about what this particular dog needs, and we are placing them with people that maybe aren't equipped or don't like to do those things, then ultimately we're not doing a service to the dog or the guardian, and we're creating more problems than we're fixing by just adopting the dog out. And so I do feel like that's a big piece too, that, really looking at how truthful we can be about what that dog needs and making sure that we're really matching, based on not just this dog's super cute. Although I will say Peter was super cute, but but even just my adoption with him, I looked at the picture and was like, this dog is adorable. I wasn't really looking for a new dog, Definitely was not looking necessarily for such a young puppy, but he was so cute. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, and he's only got like 3 legs." And when I when I went up there, there was a couple of us that were looking at the same puppies because it was like an adoption event. And I'm so thankful that they really listened to both me and the other person that really wanted Peter and weren't just like, oh, well, they filled their thing out first. Because what I brought to the table was a little bit different than what a new first-time dog owner could bring to the table, in that I was also prepared to make sure that all of his, PT and rehab needs were met. And, so it was just like, really listening to people and what their needs are, I think is a huge, huge piece too.
I just want to take a moment to appreciate that with all the knowledge that we have with dogs, you just described him as a dog with like 3 legs. He just has 3 legs. It's not like 3 legs.
It's like, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. It just depends. No, you're right.
Sorry,
he has 3 legs.
You were just saying this beautiful thing, and I just couldn't get past the fact that this eloquent human that I go to for so much advice just described your 3-legged dog as like 3 legs. So I'm sorry. Okay, we'll get back now.
Oh, Petey.
Okay, so then you stated that you didn't know of, or maybe you just weren't aware of some of the questions that you should ask. And we don't necessarily have to get into the specifics as far as, do I need to hike with this dog? But what are some of the questions that you wish you knew to ask going into this?
I really wish I had asked questions around, how is he around different environments? Has he had exposure to, events like big family events? How is he with other pets? How does he do on leash walks? I know that oftentimes fosters haven't exposed their dog to a lot of things and might not have answers to those questions, but from day one, when we brought Mack home, he was truly terrified of going on walks. I didn't realize he was terrified. I didn't really know what was going on. But really the world kind of scares him. He's a very brave, but very scared dog. And I think if we had just known some of that from the start, we could have got the help he needed a lot quicker. Truthfully, it took us almost 2 years to be like, oh, he's leash reactive and it's fear-based. And like, he needs help. This isn't something he's just going to magically grow out of. So I think even just asking some of those questions from the start would have set us up to be able to help him. Again, I didn't know what leash reactivity is. I had no idea that was even a term out there. So even if I got back information that did say that that's what was going on, I probably wouldn't have put the two and two together, but I at least could have explained to someone else, hey, this has been going on long before he came into our lives. Like, I think something is going on. Like, a 5-month-old puppy should not be this afraid of the world. And I just didn't know better. I didn't know what was normal and what wasn't and what needed some help. So I definitely think those are questions I would ask. I 1,000% would say, if there's ever going to be interactions with other pets, whether it's, going to visit a family or staying with a friend when you're traveling, asking a lot of those same questions, especially how they are around other pets would be helpful. We didn't have anyone else that was close that had other dogs or anything like that. So I didn't even ask. And now, like, not that Mac can't be around them. We certainly go on hikes and everything like that, but he's not the type that would go stay at someone's house if they had another dog there. It's just too stressful for him. And so if we were to welcome another dog, I'd certainly want to know that, just so I can understand, okay, day one, we need to figure out, is it a pet sitter coming to our house? Do we have a friend that doesn't have another dog there that could watch, this new family member and things like that? It took us a while to figure out something as simple as who's going to watch Mac when we travel, because we do still want to travel and things like that. That having that info from the start would be really useful.
So that brings me, I know Karen and I kind of talked about, when we were kind of prepping our ideas of what to ask you and everything. She really honed in on the medical piece, because I know that that's definitely something that Karen has experience with. So I guess my question is, around what time or what age in your journey with Mac did you realize that there was something medically going on as well?
Our vet thinks that Mac probably tore at least one knee a couple of months before we realized right before Thanksgiving of the first year we had him. So he wasn't even 2 yet. He was very
Wow.
young. And I now can look back and say pain has certainly played a role in his leash reactivity. I think he was experiencing some level of pain from day one. And so when he'd see other dogs, he'd start associating that pain with them. And that really was playing a huge role. But on the reverse, because he had to be sidelined from interacting with the world for so long, doing his 2 knee surgeries back to back, I actually think that helped us recognize that we had the opportunity to start diving into his reactivity and how pain was playing a role. So I guess double-edged sword there of, at least we figured out what was going on and we had the opportunity to fix it, but it does break my heart to think how long he probably was feeling pain. I did see the day he tore his second one, he was running in the backyard and immediately came up and held his leg up, and we're like, there goes the second leg. So that was not long after we got the diagnosis. He had torn the first one too. So he's pretty much lived with some version of pain for 4.5 to 5 years, I would say.
So I want to kind of take it back a step if possible, because I find I get so, and I'm sure you probably too, but I get so many questions about the CCL tearing or the TPLO surgery. And I think one of the first ones, and I think certainly with the second one you started to describe it, and maybe it wasn't the same experience with the first one, but what were kind of the first symptoms or signs that you saw that something was going on?
It was really minor things that I didn't really recognize were even things till I started looking at all them together. So, he would sometimes be a little slow to get up off the couch and follow us. And normally he was always running after us. He wanted to be by our size 24/7. I was like, okay, all of a sudden he's just like watching us and then getting up, 20 or 30 seconds later. He also got really fearful of jumping in the car. And I was like, interesting. He's never had a problem. Like, he will jump over anything. He will jump up on things. And all of a sudden he was like, absolutely no to the car. So I was like, okay, that's different. What's going on here? And then finally he was starting to limp a little bit, but it was really only after, an hour and a half walk, or he had been running around the yard or something like that. It wasn't all the time. And even our vet, when we brought him in, she's like, he probably just sprained something. He's a young dog. He's a wild child. He loves to run around, throw himself off at things. Like, you have nothing to worry about. And then we started doing more and more testing, and she's like, okay, there is something going on here. So I think Mack is just like other dogs. He's incredible at hiding what's going on. And he's thankfully made me a lot more detail oriented. If anything changes with him, I'm like, all right, we're going to start tracking this and seeing if it's a pattern or what is going on. I'm actually the one who found that he had moderate arthritis about a year ago. I was like, he's just walking a little bit different. And I was sending videos to our vet, and she's like, I don't really see anything. And I'm like, this isn't like Mac, something's going on. And so I pushed for x-rays, and she's like, yeah, there's more pain going on here. And I was like, see, I know it. I watch him enough that I've figured out if anything changes with him and it's happening more than once, there's probably something going on with him.
That's such an important point that you just kind of hit on, is this idea that we do have to be our dog's advocate in those situations, because we know our dogs better than our vets. And I'm not disparaging vets, saying anything bad about them, but they don't see our dogs on a day-to-day basis. So some of the things that may not seem like a big deal to them, we know our dogs. Because when CJ tore his CCL, all his symptoms were toe touching when he would stand up. He would jump up on the bed, he'd go for a walk. Like Mac, he was a little bit reluctant to stand up, but all his symptom was just toe touching. And I took that to my vet, and thankfully we have a good rapport. Not saying that you don't with yours, but she was like, yeah, let's test. I think this is what's going on. But you have to be your dog's advocate, and it's great that you are doing that for Mac.
Yeah, I love our vet. She's been fantastic. I also think she recognized, like, he's a young dog. These are expensive tests. It could be a number of things. Like, she didn't want to go all in and, put us in a situation we didn't feel comfortable paying or anything like that. And I'm like, look, if something's going on, I'd rather just know the answer. Like, we need to do what we need to do. And I'm glad that, one, she's open to that, because I've heard horror stories of vets being like, no, we're going to try all these other things for like 6 months before we get to the point of doing an x-ray. And our vet's like, if you're going to pay for it and you're okay with it and you want to find out what's going on, like, we will do that. But I kind of always laugh because I have to take video and send it to her, because every time we go into the office, even if he's been like throwing up for days, he just walks in like, I'm feeling great. And then she's always like, this is just Mac in the vet's office. He loves coming here. He's always happy. Like, you just have to send me videos, because I know he's very different at home when it's just you and you're able to see what's really going on with him.
I would just like to take this moment to push my favorite thing that I push on all of my clients. Get pet insurance. Get it now before you need it. Get the pet insurance. It's worth it.
And find a wonderful vet that you do have that rapport with. Because if you don't have that rapport,
because
it's so hard to be in that position, like you're saying, Karen, where I know my dog on a day-to-day basis, and this doesn't look or feel right. But also in the back of your mind, you're like, but I'm not a vet, and my vet knows a lot more about these things than I do. And I've, myself have been in this similar situation, where I've been like, I know you're saying it's probably nothing, but at the same time, I feel like maybe it is something. So can we just do that? Like, I know you don't want to, but can we? And I feel like, if you don't have that level of rapport with your vet, like, find one you do. Find one you do have that, that level of communication with, where they're just as willing to listen to the, what's in your gut and what you're feeling, because I think it's so crucial.
And then when you do find that vet, every couple of months, send them like cookies or flowers in the mail, because that's what I do. And then they let me send them pictures randomly on a Tuesday of something in CJ's ear, and they go, "You're fine, Karen, calm down." And I go, "Okay, here's some cookies."
We send coffee. Figure they always
Yes,
need more
Coffee. Yep, that's a good idea.
Exactly.
So then my question is, with the surgeries, how do you feel like, because obviously I'm assuming he's still on some level of pain meds, correct?
We use them periodically.
Okay.
We're in a good place between PT and just keeping him active that we don't need them regularly, but I can see our future ending up there sooner rather than later, especially as he keeps getting older.
Do you have like stuff for like as needed, like if you have an exceptionally, strenuous day for him?
Yeah, we keep about a month of pain meds on hand just in case. And actually, about a month ago, he started putting less weight on one side of his body. And I was like, this is new. This is different. What is going on? And again, thanks to that great relationship with our vet, I just called and said, hey, I think something's going on. Is it okay if I start giving him pain meds? We haven't done anything strenuous, but something's off. And she was like, yes, I know you have him on hand. Give it to him for a few days. Call me with how it's going. We can always give you more meds if you need it. She also knew we were going to our physical therapist in a couple of days. So she's like, go to them, see what's going on too. But we certainly have reached the point we need to keep them on hand, because you never know when something will pop up, whether it's the weather has been bothering him.
Right.
He does something interesting like rolling on the grass and deciding it hurts his leg, or just we, went on too long of a hike that day.
Right. I love that. I love your vet. I don't know who they are, but I love them. I have the same. I mean, Peter's, I don't even know how old he is now. Yeah, it's about a year and a half ish, somewhere around there. He's like, like a year and a half, and he has like 3 legs. But, even for him, I've got that as needed pain meds, because having the amputation at such a young age and all of the things that come with that, and, gait issues and potential joint issues, like my vet was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with if he looks like he's off on a day, or looks like he's a little painful, or he's a little bit guarded with his gait. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I do love that you have that relationship and they're open to that. So my question then is, how do you feel like his behavior changed pre-surgery, during surgery, and then like recovery?
I think the biggest thing, probably behavior wise, that changed was the fact that he wasn't being exposed to a lot of things that were stressing him out and ultimately probably making that pain a lot worse. We were able to just, keep his world very small. His walks consisted of walking down the driveway and then walking back in the house. But even now, again, we're 5 years out from his first surgery, which is crazy actually to say out loud. Does not feel like it's been that long, but I definitely can tell if he's feeling more sore, because his threshold around dogs decreases. He could be, normally like 6 or 7 feet and totally fine. When he's in pain, it's like 15 houses away. He sees a dog and he's like, no, don't want to go that way. And I'm like, all right, thinking you're not feeling so hot today. Thank you for letting me know that, Mack. So I think it really helped us just kind of get him on a good baseline in terms of how he was feeling about everything. But now certainly a lot of what we experience with him has to do with how he's feeling from the pain, or if, he's feeling great or not.
I got momentarily distracted and it left my brain. Nicole, if you have one, go. Oh my God. It's like right there. It's like right there.
My next questions were going to be about social media. So I know you want to do more on the TPLO stuff.
Okay.
First.
Yes. Okay. So I just want to speak on it a little bit, because like I said, I think that there's so many people out there that can benefit from sharing the information about the process, not just from the behavior side of things, because obviously, as we've acknowledged, it affects how our dogs behave. But I also think so many people either hold back from doing the surgery or just don't know what to expect from it. So what was kind of your experience going through this process with the first and the second knee, unfortunately?
I would go through another T-pill any day of the week. Mac ripped a nail off the following winter, and that was a harder recovery than his 2 back-to-back knee surgeries. I told his vet that, and she laughed at me, and I was like, no, I'm serious. I will do a knee surgery any day of the week. I don't know if we got lucky, and Mac was just a very good patient, but I found it a lot easier than the horror stories I was reading on Facebook, because I did join a Facebook group specifically for dogs that have torn their knees, that are going through a surgery or deciding to go the more conservative route. And I was like, wow, this is going to be a terrible, 18-week recovery here, because we already knew he tore both. We were going to do them 7 weeks apart, went into that fully knowing it. And I was like, it sounds miserable. And our surgeon was amazing. He was upfront with us the whole time about what recovery would look like. He also is more on the dog needs to get up and move around kind of camp. He's like, do not crate him for 23 and a half hours a day. That's not going to help him. Don't let him run around. Don't let him jump on things, but put him in a small area and let him get up if he feels like he wants to get up. So it really wasn't that bad for us. I certainly know it helped that Mac was young. He was very fit. We didn't really see a lot of like muscle wasting prior to the surgeries. We got lucky. This was all pre-COVID, so there wasn't long surgery waits. We basically had our consultation right after Thanksgiving, and he had the surgery the day after Christmas. It was a very quick turnaround. And then he had his x-rays at 6 weeks, and we did the second knee on the 7th week. So I think all that played a role, but I thought it wasn't a big deal. I really didn't think it was. Like, yes, the dog isn't going to feel great the first few days, and it is very annoying that you need to give them all these different meds on all these different schedules, like at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and all that fun stuff. But by week 2, Mac was able to start his physical therapy. We were taking him somewhere. He had so much fun. He loved going on all the exercise equipment and getting a Kong of peanut butter when they were lasering him. Both of us ultimately looked forward to those weekly sessions. Even now, again, 5 years later, we still do different exercises, and it's a great bonding event for us. Like, we have so much fun bringing out the different, things that he can work on. And I also have to say is, if your dog's a great candidate for surgery, definitely consider it. Don't feel overwhelmed at the long term or the long recovery. It goes very quickly. And it's something that, again, if Mac had more knees, I would do it. Thankfully, he only has 2, so we only have to do the 2 surgeries. But I would never hesitate again if a future dog needed it.
I love that the vets seem to thankfully be accepting the approach of getting them up and walking around, because our surgeon was the same. She did not want him crated because the old school mentality was to crate them the entire 6-week recovery. And now it's no, get them up, get them moving. And I will say my experience was a little bit different, but I think it was because CJ was older, and CJ is stuck in his ways, and he wasn't allowed to get up on the sofa, and he couldn't get up on our bed, and that was like traumatic for him after 10 years of being allowed up on it to have to stay off of it for a while. So I think that was a little bit harder, but I would also strongly encourage people to do the surgery. And in the same breath, I would strongly encourage them not to join those social media pages, because I joined them and I was like, I don't know how we're going to get through this. This is going to be the worst
Right.
experience of my life. It's going to be miserable. We can't do this. So I would strongly recommend not doing that. And I think that kind of leads us to our next topic of social media, unless you had something to add to that, Nicole.
No, I think it's very important, though, that, you really take into consideration, too, your individual dog, because I can't, like, in the same breath, like, I cannot imagine having to do this with Peter just because he is, like, so off the wall, bouncy, runny, like, he's always at a plus 20 all the time. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like if he did have that injury, he probably wouldn't be so bouncy and everything. And so I feel like eventually, like, doing that would be necessary to get him back to where he is. But I do feel like there's definitely that, in the back of my mind, like, oh my goodness, this would just be so terrible. It would be so hard for him. It would be super hard for me. Like,
I mean, it's not like a walk in the park. It's not like the easy, like you said, there's a lot of meds, there's a lot of things too. But I couldn't imagine not doing the surgery. Like we are past the 1 year mark of the first knee. So we are on bated breath waiting for the second one. And I'm like, please God, let's not do this because I don't want to do this again. But I would do it again in a heartbeat for just his quality of life. So like we've said, I strongly encourage people to consider all the facts and just know that at the end of the day, the 6 weeks are going to go by either way. So 6 or 12 weeks or however long it is, I don't remember. It's a blur of my life now. But it's going to go by either way. So just do it.
right. That's what I was trying to say, Karen. Was that...
We did it. We did the thing.
That's what I was trying to say. That I would do it because of his quality of life, obviously.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like scary to me to think about that.
Oh, yeah.
But thanks for being in my head and getting that out for me.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for us. I was like, he's not even 2. How do I imagine a life of restriction when going out into the world and sniffing for 2 hours is what brings him so much joy? That I had to balance that, like, okay, we have to keep him quiet for this time. And he thinks that running around the house doing zoomies for a long time is like the best thing ever. But long term, we know, like, he can't just live this small, sad life otherwise. So we survived. If Peter, knock on wood, ever needs it, I know that you would survive too. It's really not as terrible as the internet makes it seem.
So speaking of internet then, so one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously I found you through Instagram, but your journey with Mack, living that out and living that through your Instagram profile, has that had a more positive or more negative effect on your journey with him?
Truthfully, probably cried every day for the first 6 months we had Mack. I was just so overwhelmed. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, did we get a broken puppy? Are they all like this? What do we do? And so once I started to realize, no, others also go through these things, and there's a whole community out there of people that are willing to just let you rant and, not try to tell you that you're awful or anything like that. That really helped, I think, just make us feel less alone. Again, we didn't have a lot of friends or family with dogs, but the ones we did, their dog just kind of like was their shadow and came with them everywhere. It was no big deal. They just literally like hang out on the couch when you came over to watch a football game. And then we had this crazy 6-month-old who was having meltdowns on walks and was running around the house nonstop and tearing up things. And we were like, something's not the same here. And truthfully, I feel like I said this earlier, but I didn't even know what reactivity was. And Instagram literally taught me that term. So as bad as social media can be and the internet can be, it really did help us get Mac the help he needed because others were talking about things. And I was like, wait, that's what we're going through too. There's a term for it. It's not just you have a really scared puppy, which is how I had been describing him. So I definitely think there's that like love-hate relationship when it comes to social, but there's also a great community out there of great dog guardians who aren't afraid to hide what the reality is of living with difficult dogs, or even just great dogs that have bad days, because that happens too. And I've always found I don't want to hide anything. If even I can help one person
Right.
go, okay, I'm also going through that. Good to know. There is help, out there for me. I've had so many people send me messages of like, my dog's going through a knee surgery. I'm really nervous. Like, do you have any tips of what I need to be thinking about? And I'm like, these are all the questions I asked our surgeon. And I felt great leaving that conversation. Go ask your surgeon these things, see what they have to say. Or something as simple as I figured out Mac needed to learn to wear a cone before we had to put him in it for 4 weeks at a time. And other people are like, I saw that video. That was so helpful. Thank you for reminding me this is something I should work on. So I think that there's a lot out there that people can really benefit from. And I truly don't think our relationship with Mac would be the same without it, because we'd probably still be sitting over here however many years later going, what do we do? Where do we turn? Is this okay?
Do you feel like you ever got any I know you're nodding. You're nodding and I haven't even said anything yet. Yeah, I mean, do you feel like you ever got any of the negative? I mean, obviously my experience with Instagram is a little bit different because I don't share a lot of like the day-to-day. I share more of like my thoughts and my feelings about things. But so for you, obviously you're kind of living out this, reactivity journey, which you're new to as a new guardian and a new, person having a dog for the first time. Like, were there any negatives that stood out for you where you're like, I have to approach this differently, I guess?
Maybe because I work in social media for my full-time job, I just know there's angry people out there. And no matter what you do, no matter what side you're on, people are going to feel passionately. But we definitely get a lot of hate, especially when I'm open that, Mac is fear-based. That is his reactivity. We aren't going to put him in situations where it's worse. We're not going to force him to interact with dogs on walks. That's just not okay. He is on medication, which really gets people fired up about the fact that he has anxiety and does need some support there. But at the same time, it's less about them and more about like, I know who Mac is. I know what he needs. This is what's working for us. And again, even if it only helps one person say,
right,
okay, I didn't know that I could ask my vet that, or I didn't know that this was an option for me, or you know what, like that's great that, he needs Prozac and is now able to deal with the wind in the backyard, so despite all the hate, there's still so much support out there that I ignore the hate. I know it's coming. It is what it is. But I think that the positives certainly outweigh all of that.
So I have a potentially unfair question, and I'm genuinely I don't mean this in a mean way. I want to explore this side of things. So because you are in this beautiful position to offer this help and this insight into what a lot of people are going through, but at the end of the day, you're not a professional dog trainer. How do you kind of find that balance of I can share this, or like when do you know to be like I probably should refer this to somebody else? And I don't mean this as any shade towards you. I just mean as for educating the people that are listening who might be in your same shoes, how to handle that kind of situation.
No, I love that question. I think it's so important. And I am always very forthcoming of like, this is what worked with Mac. He is a individual who has different feelings about different things, not offering people or telling them, hey, go out and use a long line because that's going to help. Well, if your dog is stronger than you or you live in the city, like that's not going to work for you. Don't follow what we're doing because we figured out what works for us. So I feel like that's always a balance that anyone on social media needs to remember of like what works for us isn't going to work for everyone. But at the same time, I think it's important to still be like, look, my dog is on a long line, on a harness. He doesn't need a prong because he's scared of the world. Or it's okay that he's never going to be an off leash dog because he's scared of the world and also likes to chase things. So I'm not going to put him in a situation where he can do those things and run off and get hurt. And I don't think using an e-collar is going to solve all of our problems. So it's certainly finding that balance of this is what worked for us. It's not going to work for everyone, but at the same time, like you still don't need to cause your dog pain or cause your dog fear. And that's ultimately my goal of just showing Mack's not perfect. He has a lot going on. He can be challenging. And we've still figured out how to live this great life together where when we adopted him, I hated going on walks. We didn't do it. And now I'm like, yes, we get to go on walks 2 times a day. And we get to spend all this time outside, even though really I don't love the outside. And so that's how I always approach it, right? Of like, it's okay that you might need to tweak what you do with your dog, but please don't just think that you need to cause them harm or pain or fear to get what you need out of the situation. We've never had to do that, and we've come so far in the last 5 years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it brings about, kind of like what you're saying. It's not only like a sense of community, right? Like I am sharing my experiences with you. This is what's worked for us. Hopefully, if nothing else, it might just give somebody an idea or a question to pursue, or just even a thought in the back of their head, like, oh, okay, well, if they could make it work, maybe I could start to try to look at some of these things that maybe we haven't been doing or that we were doing differently. And so I feel like it's a lot less about you necessarily giving advice versus offering a safe space for information exchange, I guess. I mean,
And
that
like
might
showing what's possible too, right? Yeah. Like it's not going to be bad forever. I promise. I feel like that's my end goal of like, it was tough going for a while. I feel you on that, strangers on the internet. It will get better, I promise.
I think sometimes in the dog Instagram side of things, that message gets lost sometimes when we're sharing our journey. People automatically assume that whoever is sharing it is offering advice and saying, this is what you need to do, when that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes the person is just sharing what has worked for them. So it's important to remember that not everything you see on Instagram is something you have to do. That goes for everything, not just dog.
And it's such like a short snippet of time. If I'm showing 15 seconds of my day with Mac, how are you getting the rest of 23 hours of our lives together too, right?
Well,
I think a lot of people do that.
They just know. They obviously know better than you do. They can tell everything from that 7 seconds that they just know.
Yeah, my favorite is when I do sometimes actually show something like in a story, and then I get like these weird random comments, like DMs that are like, "Oh, well you didn't really do that. You've really used a shock collar and you're just not showing it in your video." And I'm like, "What about my account makes you think that that's accurate?" But it's like you do, like no matter what, like you said, you're always going to get people that either want to take what you say, out of context, or want to read more into what you're saying, or want to, just out of hand try to discredit what you're saying when it's really, you're just providing information on things that have worked for you and Mac.
Yeah, I get a lot of comments especially if Mack is in our neighborhood on a long line, of people being like, there's no way you walk him on a long line. I'm like, we live in a very quiet neighborhood in the middle of nowhere. I promise you, he is on a long line in our neighborhood. I would never do that in downtown Boston. But yes, I'm not just breaking out this long leash for 10 seconds of Instagram
Right.
fame and putting him on a 3-foot leash. Like that's not what I want to do with my life here.
My favorite comment recently that I got, it was like a 7-second video. It showed CJ sniffing out on a walk, and then it showed him laying in my bed. And the comment was, I don't know why you would get a dog just to chain it and leave it outside all the time. And I was like, there's no dog chained here. He's literally sleeping in my bed, but okay. Instagram is a wild place.
But I love the stuff that you put out. I do feel like it is, equal parts like raw and emotional. I mean, not like you're sitting on the post like crying, but emotional as in I can feel your journey come through in a lot of your posts. And I just love watching Mack and all his little antics. He's so adorable. I just want to like squish his little face.
With wrinkles, they're the best.
They just keep leaving tonight. They just keep leaving. I swear I have good questions for you. I'm right, because like I have your Instagram, like I'm looking at your Instagram right now, and like I was like, oh, I want to ask about that, and I'm looking at it because it's one of your most recent reels, and it's the strangers on the internet. You can't let your reactive dog walk in front of you on a harness, and I'm just like, had a question about that, but now it's gone. I hate my brain sometimes.
It's okay, Karen. Karen, did you figure out your question yet?
I did, and I even wrote it down so it wouldn't magically disappear again. So, and it kind of is kind of a take on the question you just asked, but as far as like the social media side go, what do you think dog owners should look for when they are going to follow somebody on social media? Because like I was looking at that post that says strangers on the internet tell you to do X, Y, or Z. What would you encourage potential followers or people to look for?
I think it's really important for people to acknowledge the good and bad. Like, I have bad days. I get mad at my coworkers. I don't show up the best way possible. Our dogs are the same. And I think it's very suspicious if people are only saying, I live the best life with my dog. We go on these amazing adventures together. And I'm like, your dog probably gets sick on occasion. They probably get tired. You personally are having a bad day and don't want to spend 24 hours with them. So I think that that's really important. I would take it as a red flag if people are saying every day is, the most beautiful day ever. You should have more good days than bad days, but at the same time, we're all human. Our dogs are living animals with feelings as well. So I think that's important. I also think I've really appreciated when people are open of like, I didn't know this. I did the wrong thing. I am learning right alongside everyone else here. I think that that's really important too. I know we kind of fell into the trap, what you were saying, Karen, of like, we Googled dog trainers. We picked the one that was local and they were fine, but they were not a good fit for Mack. He was on the older end of the puppy class we took. He was also already like 50 pounds compared to the, 15-pound dogs in the class. He also is a hound and had, not a great attention span 3 weeks after we adopted him. Surprise, surprise. And I definitely was like, we should have done our research. We should have asked better questions. We really should have not fallen into that, like, everyone is equal. Everyone knows the same thing. Everyone's, if you fall into positive reinforcement, you're all the same. And I think that that is also something a lot of people are like, they talk about positive reinforcement. They must be amazing. And it's like, there's so many spectrums of that. And, for us, what one trainer might recommend might not be a good fit for Mack. He is, he's brave, but at the same time, he also is sensitive. So
Right.
We gotta, take that in consideration. So I think that's also something of, don't just follow people because they say that they're positive reinforcement or that they're subscribing to a certain lifestyle with their dog. I think you really need to take it a step further and say, is what they're talking about really resonating with you? Because that first trainer, we just did not click. I was like, is there something wrong with my dog? She really had me convinced that Mack was broken. She also talked about reactivity in such a negative way and described it in such a way. I was like, no, Mack isn't aggressive. He's not lunging and barking. I don't know what's going on with him, but she's saying he's not reactive when ultimately he was. So I think it's really important to dig a little bit deeper and not just look at that surface level content that they're putting out there, and really making sure that, it really does align with you, right, your values, and what you're trying to get out of that ultimately relationship. We all have relationships with one another, whether we like it or not. We're ingesting their content and joining their journey with their dogs, right? I feel like I go on vacation with you, Nicole and Peter. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so fun. We had such a great time. I'm like, oh wait, I was still at home. I did not go with them.
I mean, but I think what you said about the training piece in particular, because there is such a spectrum on both ends. There's a spectrum on both ends of the spectrum. And I think I'm having a Karen moment now. I think really for what you said about it, you have to click with that person, right? And I think just like what we were talking about with the vet, you have to be able to have a relationship with your trainer, even if it's, just that person that you're going to for puppy class, but you have to feel heard. And I feel like that's a huge thing that's missing. That's a disconnect between trainers and guardians a lot of time, is that for me, and I'm just saying for me, I remember way back when I was first starting to work with guardians, and I didn't really quite understand the concept of active listening and validation. It was more of the talking at you. Obviously, you came to me for a problem and I'm going to fix your problem, versus I'm going to work with you and help you in this journey. And along the way, we'll work on your problem. But I feel like there is such a lack of that listening piece and that validating your concerns piece, that if you're not getting that, if you don't feel heard by that trainer, by that behavior professional, by that vet, by your groomer, what have you, I think that's a red flag, and that should be a red flag for a lot of people. To me, that's my first and foremost job, is to make you feel heard.
I think one of my most recent favorite aspects of working with a trainer we've worked with recently is she's always ultimately on a scale of 1 to 10, how impactful is this on your life, and how much time do you have to dedicate to this? Because I can give you the best training advice in the world and the most, in-depth training plan, but if you don't have the mental capacity to take it on right now, I can give you something else to do. We can work on management. I can just tell you it's okay that this is going on and the world's not going to end. And I think that was really missing from that first trainer we worked with. She was like, this is what you do with puppies. This is how you go to the vet. This is how you bring them to the restaurant with you. And I just was like, what if it doesn't go that way? And we never had that relationship. And I definitely brought things to our trainer now where I'm like, this is what's going on. I'm really worried. It's a problem. And she's like, but is it a problem for you? And I'm like, no, but it seems like it's a societal problem. And she's like, but if it's not a problem for you, don't worry about it. I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you for telling me that. So I think your point is perfect. You do need to have that relationship and acknowledge that there is a human in the equation. Yes, you want the relationship between the dog and their guardian to get better, but ultimately just validating, their feelings can actually solve a lot of the problems that are going on.
I think I love your trainer. I don't even know who it is, but I think I love them.
I picked the good ones. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you can plug them. You can plug them if you want.
We most recently have worked with Lizzie Flanagan of Lizzie and the Good Dog People. We work remotely, and it's a great relationship for us.
Nice. Very nice. Plug. Little shameless plug.
So, do you have any other questions for us before we wrap this up?
Is there anything else you want to know about Mack outside of our fun, anxiety, reactivity, pain journey? I feel like that's my whole personality as of the last 5 years, but anything else you want to know?
I want to know what is your absolute most favorite, just get you right in the heart thing that you love about Mack.
He is not afraid to tell you how he's feeling without actually vocalizing at you. So if you're sitting on the couch and doing something and he wants your attention, he's going to come and whack you with his paw, and he's going to do it until you acknowledge him. Or he'll just climb in your lap while you're trying to work on your computer. We have those moments a lot. But he's recognized that he has a voice. So if he is really nervous about something, or he's just not about it, he knows he can vote with his feet. That's come in really handy where maybe something happened and something that was okay previously is no longer okay. I know that he has figured out that he knows he can tell me. But he also just makes me laugh. He's like the funniest dog I've ever met. But yeah, he's the best.
I'm going to say I absolutely love his smile. He's just so, like, I'm just looking at him. He's so stinking cute.
Like,
He
really,
really
he's an Instagram star.
Yeah, he is. For sure. This picture of him with his baby in the underwater treadmill. Oh, my goodness.
He really is
Too cute.
just a little nugget, and I want to squeeze him.
All 70 pounds. He's not even little.
Well, I think all dogs are little. CJ's 85 pounds, and I'm like, oh, he's so tiny. He's a baby. But so then my last question for you then is this is a big one. What is the absolute best piece of advice, training, behavior, care, whatever, that you have ever gotten that you want to pass on to other people?
Oh, that's so many nuggets of information I have learned from others I'd love to pass on. But I would say the best thing is just, it's okay to advocate for your dog, good or bad. I have advocated for him getting medical care, which was a little scary, being like, hey, someone who went to school for 35 years and knows everything, and me, you're into my journey with my dog, trying to tell you what to do. But also just like, I left that first, puppy class being like, that wasn't great. I feel like that just wasn't it for us. We need to go somewhere else, and not that we were in the wrong, right? Like, something just didn't click for us. And if I had just given up, I can't imagine where our journey would have gone or the direction it could have gone in otherwise. So I think just, it's okay. I'm an introvert through and through. I hate confrontation. I will avoid it to, the ends of the earth. But I also think our dogs can't advocate for themselves. So we just have to be their voice. And it's, we're all doing it together, even if it's scary.
So, Erika, and this is always one that I like to preface, that you do not have to if you do not want to, but if you do want to, how can our listeners get a hold of you, find you, learn more about you?
If you couldn't tell already, we spend a lot of time on Instagram. Our handle is Hound Dog Mack. That is at hounddog_Mack. I spend too many hours a day on it, so that's the best place to find us. And I will talk about Mack or talk about the world with anyone and everyone who wants to reach out to us.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Erika, for joining us. Give lots of little hugs to Mack.
Always. It was great to be here.